Now, let me ask, I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but given what happened to you in your service with the military, how do you feel about your kids possibly joining the military themselves? And what maybe advice do you have for parents out there whose kids are just about to start their military career?
So that comes up a lot. And I tell my children, if you want to join, you can. You don't have to. I don't want to push them into following in my footsteps. I want them to be their own person. But I also tell them, and I tell other parents, I tell people that tell me they're going into the military, I tell them this. There's the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard, and now Space Force. That's 6 sections of the military. Each one of them have a lot of jobs. Not all of them are going to be infantry like I was right up front, but every job is important. And there are so many different things. My oldest son loves to fish, a really good fisherman. Well, I met a guy who was on the fishing team for the Army, and I asked him about it. He said, yeah, he told me that, he was a fisherman in college, was a professional fisherman, and then the Army sought him out to fish for them because it's advertisement for the Army to have those, boats out there wrapped and say U.S. Army, Marines, whatever, and that's what they do. They get paid to fish. A buddy of mine, his father played basketball in the Army. There's all these different jobs and opportunities. So too often people think it's going to be the most dangerous job. And you know what? Sometimes that's the job they want. Sometimes it's not. So I tell my kids, if you're interested, there's a lot of options. And I also tell everyone that's going in the same thing. You may do 4 years and get out. You may do 20 years and retire. But if you always assume you're going to do 4 years, well, in 4 years, you're going to be 4 years ahead or starting back over. With all those jobs in the military, you can find something that when you get out will set you ahead of everyone else. I think that's where a lot of us veterans struggle when we get out. We've chosen jobs that don't always relate to what we want to do in civilian life. So then we're starting all over. So that's where the struggle starts to come in. So I always try to warn them up front, hey, choose what you want, not what the recruiter wants.
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Leese. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is Noah Galloway. Noah is an American hero and a combat veteran who joined the United States Army shortly after the attacks on 9/11. During his second deployment to Iraq, he was severely wounded in an IED attack that cost him his left arm and his left leg. That did not stop this American hero from competing in events such as Spartan races, CrossFit, even competing on Dancing with the Stars and almost taking down the whole competition. He's been on the cover of Men's Health magazine. He's a true hero. I'm really honored to have him on the podcast today. So get down there, smack the subscribe button, tap that like, and let's jump into it right now with Noah Galloway on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father, Noah Galloway. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you, Alex, for having me on.
All right, let's start right here. How many kids do you have and how old are they?
I have 3. I have my little girl who is 12, and I have 2 boys that are 14 and 16.
Very cool. Yeah, I got 4 kids myself. My daughter is also my youngest. So what kind of sports or activities are your kids into?
Well, my oldest son just got into golf last year. Both my boys play basketball, and my son, Jack, the 14-year-old, he also is a big football player. My daughter has dabbled in a few things from softball, soccer to dance, gymnastics. She hasn't quite found what she loves, but we'll just keep trying things out.
Very cool. If you could, Noah, please just take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
My background, I'm a veteran. I'm a combat veteran that served in Iraq in 2003, 2004, went back in 2005 and was injured, lost my left arm above the elbow, my left leg above the knee. I struggled with that for a while and depression, and it was actually my children that were my motivation to get help, to get better, get back into fitness, which led to running races, marathons, Tough Mudder, stuff like that. Ended up on the cover of Men's Health. From Men's Health, I went on Ellen. From Ellen, I ended up on Dancing with the Stars, came in 3rd place, won American Grit on Fox after that, and now I've just been loving life.
Yeah, wow, what an incredible story, and thank you for your service, Noah. So take me back then, if you could, here to the beginning of your fatherhood journey then. About how old were you when you first became a dad, and how did becoming a father change your perspective on life?
So 2005 is when my oldest was born. I was about 23, 24 years old, and it was crazy. Like, I've always told people that, look, a mother carries a baby for 9 months, and it's different for us fathers because, you feel like you're connected, but you're not as connected as the mother. And I remember when my oldest son, Colson, was born, being there and just loving every bit of him. But it's like over time, it's just that love just kept growing and growing. So I don't want to sound like I didn't love my child when he was born, but that love for him just continuously grow. Nowadays, he's about to be 17 in January, and I couldn't love these kids any more than I do. They're just, everything I do revolves around them. And it's been interesting to look back on the decisions I've made over life. As a young parent, sometimes we don't make the best decisions, but over time we improve. And now everything I do, I think of my children first on every decision I make.
Yeah, very well said, Noah. And yeah, I've heard many fathers speak of similar circumstances where they don't feel that connection right away. It doesn't, and a lot of even the NFL dads that I've had on here that have won the Super Bowl almost liken it to winning the Super Bowl. And that reporter says, "Hey, you're a Super Bowl champ. How does it feel?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know. It hasn't really hit me yet. It hasn't sunk
Yeah.
in."
Yeah.
So that's kind of a lot of the way it is for a lot of dads out there. What would you consider to be, Noah, the top values that you hope to instill in all your kids growing up?
I just got home from speaking to a middle school, and I told them the same thing I tell you. I tell my kids all the time, I don't expect you to be the best, but always give me your best. Because, not all of us are going to win the Super Bowl or, whatever, but we can't always be the best person we are. And I always try to encourage that in my kids. And also, I try to lead from the front with my children. Everything I do, I don't just tell them to do things, I do them. If I want them to do it, well, I better be doing it. My wife, I just recently got married a couple of months ago, and my wife has been an incredible stepmother. She's really turned our house, which was where a single guy and 3 kids lived, which was a playhouse before, into a home. And one of the things that changed was they have to make their beds every day. And at first, my middle son would say, "Well, I'm going to get back in it in a couple of hours." I'm like, "Well, that's what we're going to do." And I had to make sure I started making the bed before I could really enforce that on them. And then it wasn't really enforcing it. It was just they saw that I was also doing it, and they in turn do it. And they've adapted to that very well. And then not only that, for example, when my daughter asked me the other day, we were eating, and every time I eat somewhere, the waiter or waitress, I ask them what their name is. And every time I deal with them, I say their name. And my daughter the other day said, "You always do that. Why?" I said, "Because everyone wants to feel seen, and they don't want to just be used as a servant. They want you to know that you see them." And I said, that makes people feel good. And knowing that I do that and they see that, they're really good kids. They're very compassionate and have a lot of empathy for other people. And I feel like that's what leading from the front is all about.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I know that Dale Carnegie speaks about that in How to Win Friends and Influence People, about mentioning the person's name and how important that is when you're in a conversation, which is something that kids seem to struggle with a little bit today, is having that eye contact, that conversational skills. It seems to have lessened a little bit here over the years. And I wanted to ask you, like you said, congratulations on your marriage as well. Being married and having kids, that could be a tricky situation for a lot of dads out there as far as when to make the decision to introduce your kids to a new potential spouse. So did you have a certain point you needed to get to in the relationship before you would say, "Okay, kids, I want to introduce you now to a possible future spouse of mine"?
Oh, yes. I am very protective of my children. And my wife, Amanda, we actually met 5, almost 6 years ago. And then it was kind of just on and off. And it wasn't until it was like, okay, this is what's happening. We're getting serious. And now we're going to get married, that she met the children. And no, I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't confident in where it was going. Because, I mean, as my children have divorced parents. And, I don't want that for them. But that's just how it is. And it's like they've been through enough. I don't want to, at no time did I want them to introduce them to people, then pull those people away and do that back and forth. I wanted to be sure that they were going to be happy. And I'll tell you what, hard for me is one thing, but what I'm more impressed with is my wife, Amanda. I couldn't imagine walking into what she did. I have 3 children that aren't just babies. They are 12, 14, and 16. They have opinions. They have, ideas. And she's come in and embraced it. and the kids absolutely love her, and it's gone really well.
Yeah, hard to find a better example of love than a stepmom, a stepfather that is able to love a child as their own. And listen, on my show, Noah, I talk about all the time the fatherless crisis that we have going on in our country. So many kids are growing up without a father or a father figure in their life. It's really destroying our society in so many ways. So it's so important. And a lot of them, one of the number one reasons is because of a rough divorce where the dad has been embarrassed, financially strapped, and has gone through the ringer just to try to get a little piece of time with their kids. It's forced so many dads out of their kids' lives. So if you could speak to like your co-parenting situation, how you've been able to manage to keep a good relationship with your kids through the divorce process.
I was actually thinking about this yesterday. I was cutting grass and I was just thinking about different things. And I was thinking about the kids and as a parent and how I co-parent with their mother. And I've been fortunate enough that it's shared custody. They come and go as they want, but not everybody has that. And, when it comes to your children's mother, if you're divorced, I have opinions about her. Not all of them are good, but that is my children's mother. So in that sense, I have to respect her because I love them. And just like if I have a friend, if I met your mother, would I judge her on what she did as a parent to you if there was any problems? No, that is not my place. I respect you, therefore I respect her. And I love my children, therefore I treat their mother with respect. And that in turn has helped us co-parent. We don't always see eye to eye. If we did, that's why we're divorced. You know what I mean? But we put the children as a priority. And I feel like, there are dads out there that could say, hey, my ex isn't that lenient. And I hate that for them. But you want to keep that child in mind and see them when you can. No matter how, if it's every other weekend, we'll be there, show up every other weekend to be there for them, because that's what's important. I don't think people realize until they get older, and if they look back in their own lives, how much our parents affect who we are as people, who we are, what we do. In fact, that was what led me to get out of my depression. One day I walked into the living room and my three children were on the couch watching cartoons. And I realized that to my two boys, I'm showing them what a man is, and that's what they're going to become one day. And to my little girl, I'm showing her how a man is supposed to act. And that's what she's going to look for one day. And I knew at that moment, I was not the person I wanted my boys to be or my daughter to find. So that was my motivation to change. Now, it didn't happen overnight. I still made mistakes, but every time I fell flat on my face, I thought about my three children, and that's what motivated me to get up and going. And I owe all of my success to my three children because they drive me to want to be the best person I can be and always be a good parent first. And I always try to encourage other people, fathers, mothers, whoever, hey, you have to be willing to put them first and want to be a good leader and example.
Yeah, very well said, Noah. I'm a recovering alcoholic and an addict myself, and same thing here, a driving force for me to do the right thing in my life and to make changes as well. So very, very important. And I wanted to ask you here on a lighter note about Dancing with the Stars. How did they approach you with this? Was this something that came out of nowhere? Did you actively pursue it? And what did your kids think of your performance on the show?
Well, I definitely didn't pursue it. I've never seen the show. Even to this day, I've never watched it. They know that. I love everyone on the show, from the executive producers to the dancers to the stage hands to everybody. I just hit it off with them. We're all friends, but that show's just not my cup of tea, and they know that. But I was actually first called on by Survivor and then another show, but I kept turning them down because I couldn't spend that much time away from my children. And when Dancing with the Stars called and they wanted me, I was like, well, I can't do it. They offered me to stay in a house in LA. I said, I can't. I need to stay here in Alabama. And they said, that's fine. We'll send the dancer to you. So that's what they did. The dancer came to Birmingham. We rehearsed all week, every week in Birmingham, and flew back and forth to LA for the live show. And that's the only reason I was able to do it, because they worked around that. And, to this day, now the kids are older and I get to travel back and forth doing different things. When they're with their mom, I take advantage of it. But every decision I make, anything that, I've been asked by other shows that I've turned down because I feel like it's not a good example for the children, or it won't set a good standard for them. And so I turn down things when it comes to my children.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, though, I've had quite a few dads on here that have been on Dancing with the Stars, Donnie Osmond, Sean Spicer.
Oh,
They all
love it.
rave about the experience that they've had. So it seems like it's a fun atmosphere and a fun program.
It is. It is. I'll tell you what, Donnie Osmond is hilarious. I ran into him at a wedding, and he was like, "Noah, it's so nice to meet you. Can I get a picture with you?" I'm like, "Yes. Can I get a picture with you?" It was so cool. He's a great guy.
Yeah, good dad as well. And now let me ask, I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but given what happened to you in your service with the military, how do you feel about your kids possibly joining the military themselves? And what maybe advice do you have for parents out there whose kids are just about to start their military career?
So that comes up a lot. And I tell my children, if you want to join, you can. You don't have to. I don't want to push them into following in my footsteps. I want them to be their own person. But I also tell them, and I tell other parents, I tell people that tell me they're going into the military, I tell them this. There's the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard, and now Space Force. That's 6 sections of the military. Each one of them have a lot of jobs. Not all of them are going to be infantry like I was right up front, but every job is important. And there are so many different things. My oldest son loves to fish, a really good fisherman. Well, I met a guy who was on the fishing team for the Army, and I asked him about it. He said, yeah, he told me that, he was a fisherman in college, was a professional fisherman, and then the Army sought him out to fish for them because it's advertisement for the Army to have those, boats out there wrapped and say U.S. Army, Marines, whatever, and that's what they do. They get paid to fish. A buddy of mine, his father played basketball in the Army. There's all these different jobs and opportunities. So too often people think it's going to be the most dangerous job. And you know what? Sometimes that's the job they want. Sometimes it's not. So I tell my kids, if you're interested, there's a lot of options. And I also tell everyone that's going in the same thing. You may do 4 years and get out. You may do 20 years and retire. But if you always assume you're going to do 4 years, well, in 4 years, you're going to be 4 years ahead or starting back over. With all those jobs in the military, you can find something that when you get out will set you ahead of everyone else. I think that's where a lot of us veterans struggle when we get out. We've chosen jobs that don't always relate to what we want to do in civilian life. So then we're starting all over. So that's where the struggle starts to come in. So I always try to warn them up front, hey, choose what you want, not what the recruiter wants.
Yeah, very well said, Noah. And I've had so many veteran dads on here who are helping other veterans with that transition process. So many of them have become successful entrepreneurs. They found this whole new career on their hands after their military service. So I do make it a point to bring on as many military dads as I can here because, as I said, I am very appreciative of your service. I really don't think we stand a chance in this world without you guys. So, and going forward here, what kind of goals or plans do you have for yourself here for the future? What's next? Any projects you're working on? Any more kids coming for you? What's next?
Well, there we are working on, fingers crossed, for another child. And then also my wife, we're about to leave next week for Costa Rica. She's hosting a yoga retreat. We do a lot together, and we want to try to bring in. I'm big on talking about mental health. So is she. So we're trying to merge those together. So because we both love helping people, reaching out, trying to help as many people as we can. So that's something that her and I are working on right now.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. Last thing I want to hit you with here, Noah. I'd love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
Best advice I can give a new dad is get ready to be part of the world where every night you're going to go to bed and think, how have I screwed my child up today? Because you're going to have those thoughts. And you know what? Sometimes you're going to make mistakes. But the fact that you think about the moments of if you screwed them up or not means you're doing the right thing. It's when you don't care. That when it's the fathers that think that, they're going to grow up to do it, they're going to do whatever. No, that fear of what you're doing and how you're acting is what's going to make you a better father. And Alec, before we leave, you mentioned that you're a recovering alcoholic and addict. And I want to thank you for being someone who in the public is willing to share that, because not everyone is. And I've always told people, for those that are willing to share those struggles and show that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, you can go on to be a good father, an entrepreneur, and be successful. You're the kind of person that's going to motivate a lot of people that have been through that. So for that, I thank you. And thank you for letting me come on here.
Yeah, thank you, Noah. Listen, I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Noah Galloway, you're a first-class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you, Alex.